In this video, I replaced the clutch fan bearing on a Jeep Cherokee XJ. We need to remove the AC compressor bracket because that's where the clutch fan bearing is located. So I'm going to start by removing the fan first. The fan shroud is a bit in the way here. Mine's already broken, so I'm just tipping it out of the way. But if yours is in one piece, you should definitely remove it. It's only 4 bolts holding the fan onto the pulley, and I'm going to leave the belt tight for this because I don't want the pulley spinning around while I'm trying to loosen off the nuts. Next, I'm going to remove the belt, and I'm going to do that by first loosening off the bolt on the idler pulley. Once the idler pulley bolt is loose, I'm going to loosen off the tensioner bolt until the belt has enough slack where it can be removed off the pulleys. And just move the belt off to the side where it's not in the way. I don't have my AC compressor installed. I have a bypass pulley instead. But if you have your AC compressor there, you don't have to disconnect the lines or anything. You can just move the whole thing with the lines connected out of the way. So let's remove the clutch fan pulley itself. And at this point, it should just slide right off. Next to remove is the AC compressor, or in my case, the bypass pulley. And they both are exactly the same, other than the fact that the AC compressor is going to have some longer bolts. This is a good view of the AC compressor bracket. You'll have 2 bolts at the top to remove. And then there's another one here at the bottom. And the last one is this long one here with the nut on it. And this is the reason you have to remove the clutch fan and the pulley before being able to remove the AC compressor bracket, because you can't actually remove this bolt with the pulley in the way. The bolt on the bottom is a little bit trickier to get at, so I'm just using a universal adapter to make it a little bit easier. And now all that's left is that long bolt. Now you can definitely get at the head of this bolt with the pulley still installed, but don't let that trick you because you actually won't have the clearance to remove the bolt completely when the pulley is still in the way. So that's our AC compressor bracket. Now we can finally get at replacing that bearing. The bearing I'm going to be using is a water pump impeller bearing for 41 to 71 Jeep vehicles. The bearings are almost identical. The only difference is that the new bearing is a little bit longer on the tail end of the shaft, but it's not going to interfere with anything once it's installed. I'm just going to use a 3-prong puller with my impact gun to pull the hub off the bearing. Sometimes they can really be stubborn to get off. Now all that's left to do is press this bearing out. I'm using a shop press here, but you don't have to. You can use a ball joint press, a large C-clamp, or even a hammer to tap this out. They usually come out pretty smoothly. Here's a comparison of the two bearings. As you can see, the tail end on the shaft is a little bit longer on the new bearing, but that's not an issue. It doesn't interfere with anything. Now I'm going to install the bearing into the AC compressor bracket. And you want to push on it with the outer race of the bearing, not the inner shaft, or you can damage the bearing. The bearing bottomed out inside the socket, so I'll have to try a deeper socket to get the bearing fully seated. Next, I'm going to press the hub onto the shaft of the bearing, but I'm going to support the shaft on the bottom so I don't push the whole shaft out of the bearing itself. Careful not to press the hub too far, because you don't want any chafing issues with the bracket. About 1/8 of an inch clearance should be enough. So now that we have all this together, we can install it back into the Jeep. Just like most things, the install is going to be the exact opposite of the removal. First step is to get the AC compressor bracket bolted into place. Next is the pulley, and then the fan. It can be tricky getting these nuts tight because the pulley's just going to spin. So I'm just going to snug them up as tight as I can. And then I will tighten them up the rest of the way when the belt is on. Next is the AC compressor, or in my case, the bypass pulley. The new bearing is really smooth. What a difference from the old one. All that's left is to install the belt, and this one can be a little tricky because there's a lot of pulleys you have to go around, so just take your time. It's a little bit of a difficult spot to get a good angle to show you with the camera, so here's a diagram of how the belt is actually routed. Now that the belt is around all the pulleys, I'm going to tighten up the tensioner bolt to get the proper tension on the belt. Now, proper tension is just tight enough where the belt isn't slipping on any of the pulleys. And this just comes from years of experience to really get a good feel for it. But you can always leave it a little bit on the looser side, and if you hear a squeal, snug up the belt. And this is roughly the amount of deflection you want to see on the longest run of the belt between two pulleys. Now I can snug up the clutch fan pulley nuts because the belt is installed and it will keep the pulley from spinning. And finally, we've made it to the end. All that's left to do is to snug up the idler pulley bolt. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe.